This presentation is about my creation of a miniature Kienzle calendar torsion pendulum 400-day clock. It will be a miniature version of a clock made by Kienzle in 1912. Prior to the Great War of 1914 to 1918, German clock companies were producing very high quality 400-day clocks. In 1912, Kienzle produced the first 400-day clock with calendar work. This was day of the month and day of the week. These clocks were available with the day of the week in English, French and German, obviously for export. The calendar was fully operational for 400 days, and the overall height of the clock was 270 millimeters under a glass dome. During the period of 1914 to 1945, Germany made very few domestic clocks. But after the Second World War finished, in the 1950s, they really bounced back. Two companies produced calendar versions of their 400-day clock, one Pedersen, the other Link. The problem with these clocks, though, was that the calendar work required too much power to run for 400 days. They would really only operate while fully wound, so they were a marketing disaster. In the past, I've made several replica 400-day clock miniatures, and in all cases I've used a Konrad Mausch midget clock from the 1960s. It is a 400-day clock movement. I choose this movement because it's very small, very compact, and none of the wheels extend beyond the plates. To create a calendar clock from their basic 400-day clock movement, Kienzle added extra wheels to the front of the movement so they could have the small subsidiary dials for the date and the day. Using the 1912 full-size calendar work, I designed a smaller quadrature, which is the underdial work, and then started looking for wheels that I could use to create a miniature calendar work for this small clock. I found and fitted a 20-tooth wheel to the hour wheel, then a 40-tooth wheel to mesh with that as the intermediary wheel, and that wheel would rotate once in 24 hours or daily. I attached pins to the back of that wheel, and they engaged with the 7-tooth star wheel on the right and with the 31-tooth wheel on the left. To carry all this extra calendar wheel work, I made up a small plate, a subsidiary plate, on posts mounted to the front plate of the clock movement. Then pivot holes were created to carry the intermediate wheel and the two calendar wheels. To produce the dial for this small clock, I scanned the full-size clock dial and by photographic reduction printed a replica on gloss photographic paper. I then laminated it with a high gloss laminate. The dial on the full-size clock was a glossed porcelain enamel, and this laminated paper dial was an excellent simulation for the full-size clock dial. There was just no way I was going to be able to find a bezel to fit this unique tombstone dial. I would have to make one. Having already taken the movement from the Coma midget, I then took the bezel from the dial and reshaped it. Using heat, a mandrel and a wooden mallet, I generated the curve for the top, and with soldering and some reinforcement fitted a straight bottom into the bezel. Then with filing, sanding and polishing, I was able to create an acceptable bezel. Having completed the movement and the dial, I moved on to making the frame or the case of the clock. Using the dimensions of the full-size clock and based on a factor from the full-size dial to my miniature dial of 0.64, I was able to generate all the dimensions for a miniature version. Starting from the base, I made the two plain columns, then a platform for the movement to sit on, then the spiraled brass columns above that, made from square brass, then the crest across the top with a lozenge in the middle, and finally 3 finials for the top. A disc pendulum was made in miniature, again scaled down from the full-size pendulum of the large Kienzle clock. Most 400-day clocks have a spun brass base, but on this Kienzle calendar it had a solid pink marble base. I wanted to replicate this for my miniature, so using a timber base, I painted it with a white undercoat, then applied a pink paint and marbleized it to resemble the full-size marble base. Here is the completed clock, and viewed alone, you would not know that this was a miniature version. It looks as if it is a full-size 400-day calendar clock. Finally, here they are together, both fully operational. If you have any questions or comments about this presentation, you can send me an email at the address shown at the bottom of this page. Thanks for watching.